All right, ladies and germs, we are going to talk a little bit about the aftermath of Halloween, what to do if you overindulged, how you can get back on the bandwagon. And I recently saw a meme that I thought was really funny. It was something like, now is, candy season, followed by pie season, followed by cookies and chocolate season, followed by drinking, copious amounts of alcohol season, basically naming all the events that we are about to go through, which is, of course, Halloween, and then American Thanksgiving, and then Christmas, and then New Year's. And then it's a wonder, why we get the flu. So the flu is not a season, as many people like to talk about. It's actually just a way of being towards the fourth quarter of the year. We're inundating our bodies with sugar in the form of candy from Halloween, pies and treats around Thanksgiving, Christmas time, of course, and then the New Year with the alcohol. So let's talk a little bit about how we can circumvent that. So Halloween in and of itself, and if you celebrated Halloween last week, you know that it is an onslaught of sugar, right? Mainly of the processed kind, which of course is going to do all sorts of things like ratcheting up hunger, disordered sleep, and just the lot. And, you might think, okay, so does one night of processed sugar matter? And in the grand scheme of weight loss, in the grand scheme of hormones, to be truthful with you, the answer is no. It doesn't really matter one time, but it is the accumulation, right? It is the season of the candy and the pie and the cookies and the chocolate and the alcohol that really add up, that really attack our innate immunity, our immune system's ability to deal with invading pathogens. So the first thing I want to do is share with you that if you did have lots of candy this past week, and maybe you're still having a little bit of candy, it's okay. Yes, it might have kicked you out of ketosis. It doesn't matter. You are not a failure because you had an O. Henry bar, because you had a caramel bar. And so let's just cut the energetic cords around that right now. Okay. So that doesn't matter. I myself have a personal affinity for the O. Henry bars. I really like those little mini ones that come with the little peanut and the chocolate. I really like that. So, and I've had some, and I will continue to enjoy the holidays, but there are strategies that I want to talk to you about in terms of how you can, we'll say, have your cake and eat it too. So my first proposal here is don't kick yourself. Don't be mean to yourself. You would never talk like this to a friend. The voices in your head that are saying that you're a loser, that somehow you can't ever stick to your diet or whatever. Just cut that shit. Let it go. That doesn't matter. Enjoy chocolate. Okay. I like to call it dropping the rope. This was actually a term that I took from some of my intimacy coaches. And they were talking about it in the context of fighting, with your partner. But sometimes we have a really big internal battle as well, where we are fighting with ourselves, where it's like, we're slugging ourselves like, you loser, there's like a punch to the cheek. You loser, how could you have had so much candy? Like, you never can stay on your diet. Those are my audio sound effects of someone punching someone in the cheek. Clearly, I've never been in a fight before, but let's pretend that that's what it sounds like. And so I want you to drop the ego, drop the rope with fighting with your ego. If you think about like a tug of war, it's like you holding the rope on one side, your ego is holding the rope on the other, and there's this tug of war that's at play, right? Like, you should somehow be able to resist the temptations and stay on your diet forever, and just never let any pleasure in. Well, just drop that goddamn rope. Just drop the rope. Stop fighting with your ego, because when you drop the rope, all of a sudden you can't have a tug of war anymore, right? And so, let me share some strategies with you. So we've cut the energetic cords. We've Pinky promised that we are not going to blame and shame ourselves into submission, because if you've already tried that, you probably have figured out that doesn't work. So let's talk a little bit about some strategies in terms of, if you've fallen off the bandwagon, as we all do, how we can get back on the bandwagon and not feel any guilt, not feel any shame about it. So this is what I do every Halloween, and I'll talk a little bit about kids as well, because kids and Halloween is also a thing that we need to address as well. So typically, while the kids are trick or treating, so we're kind of walking, going door to door. I will sequester a few O. Henry bars in my pocket. I will take them out. One of my sons has a peanut allergy anyway, so I need to remove them. So it's just convenient that they make their way into my pocket, and I will eat them as we're walking. So as we're kind of walking through the neighborhood, I'll have 2-3 of those little mini candy bars, maybe 4. And so as the sugar is being processed, and we know that sugar is typically processed quicker than proteins, quicker than fat, and we get rid of it from the stomach faster than proteins and fat. So as that sugar is being processed and basically thrown into my bloodstream, I have somewhere for it to go. So I am walking. So it can be immediately sequestered into the muscles of my legs for energy. And so that's really one of the biggest tips that I can give you. And this will be all year round. So you have upcoming Thanksgiving. This can be a Thanksgiving strategy, Christmas, New Year's strategy. If you are having sugar, something that's very easily broken down into glucose and likely fructose if it's processed sugar as well, do something with big muscle groups. So the easiest thing to do that's free for everybody, of course, is to go for a walk. You can go for a walk for 10, 20, 30, 40 minutes. And that glucose is going to be sequestered, as I mentioned, into those bigger muscle groups. Of course, another thing that you can do is working out, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But typically, Halloween for me is a diet break, right? I could care less about adhering to my macros or my calories, and I just basically eat until I'm full. So the morning of Halloween, in preparation for said O. Henry Bar Palooza, I usually will schedule a leg day or a back day. So these are, again, kind of back to that theme of big muscles. I want these muscles, if possible, if the timing can work out, that I can get that back workout in or that leg workout in the morning of or the day of. Those muscles are going to be in reparation mode when I'm having the chocolate, right? And usually a leg day for me, I'll usually have it's depending on the volume of leg that I'm doing. I'll do it fasted, or I'll have a little bit of like a pre-meal workout, but most of the time it's done fasted. In either case, whether it's like a monster leg workout and I have a pre-meal, or it's kind of a lighter one and I do it fasted, in either case, muscle will be repairing, right? So I will have damaged the muscle tissue enough during that session that they are going to be in reparation mode over the next 48 to 72 hours. And I should also say that I don't gauge that by soreness. Soreness is not a good indication of whether or not you've worked your muscles. Usually soreness is an indication of novelty. So when you first start a new program, this is when you will be sore, but you do that same program 2 times, 5 times, 10 times, 20 times. You may not necessarily be sore until you change maybe some of the parameters of the workout. So maybe the volume increases, so there's more sets. Maybe the weight increases, so there's more weight. Maybe the rest time decreases, so there's more of a metabolic stress on the muscle. So don't go by soreness. I just know that I am destroying my legs every workout. It's just really the volume for me is whether I determine whether or not I'm going to have a pre-meal or not. But in either case, don't get hung up on, oh, she does a pre-meal or she doesn't, like, when should I do it? Just schedule some type of leg workout or back workout the day that you know. So this can apply for Thanksgiving coming up in November. This can be for Halloween next year, Christmas coming up, New Year's coming up. So that when you are having that simple sugar, it is going to be sequestered into the muscle. Now, The other thing that I do for Halloween, and I did this year, is before I go out trick or treating, before I know that I'm going to be having said O. Henry bars, I make sure that I have some protein and I make sure that I have some fat. So for me, that's usually like chicken with some steamed vegetables, some olive oil, maybe, could be an avocado. Usually I like just to open up half of an avocado, some salt, and maybe some ground beef, just like a lovely, lovely meal if you're kind of short on time. Whatever it is, it's balanced with a good amount of protein and fat. So the likelihood of me having gobs and gobs of candy are reduced, because I will have that tendency. I will have the gobs and gobs of candy. But when you are having the protein and fat prior to the Candyapalooza, of course, you are activating satiety signals. You are decreasing ghrelin. You are increasing leptin. There's also a volume component to it as well. Sometimes I'll also have soup as well. So just that expansion, just having that liquid volume in the stomach is also enough to, like, that stretch from the stomach will also help with satiety regulation in the appetite centers of the brain too. So soups, protein, veg, these are all really great things to have prior to the known offending event, right? So in this case, we're talking about Halloween, which might be the candy. But again, Thanksgiving, you know that you're going to have a Thanksgiving meal. So what you're going to do that morning, you're going to do leg workout or a back workout or something where your muscles are repairing. And then, prior to the dessert, you're going to have proteins and fats to help regulate your satiety. And of course, there's, this is mainly done for satiety regulation, and to also sort of improve that feedback system from the stomach to the brain. Now, if those are things that you didn't get to, you're like, damn, I wish that I knew this before Halloween. So you know that you can do it for Thanksgiving. It's coming up. But the other thing that you can do is, if you did have gobs and gobs of candy, if you're still having gobs and gobs of candy, use that to your advantage, right? Go and lift like you have now. Excess, your glycogen stores are full. So your liver is full, very likely that your muscles are full if you've been having lots and lots of these foods. Take advantage of it. Go and have a great lift. Go to the weight session and show that mother effing, show that gym who's boss, right? Show those weights who they work for, and they work for you. So, make the candy work for you. And of course, we know that the glycogen stores are limited, right? So there's about, call it 2,000 calories or so that the liver can handle, about a day or 2 days worth of, probably about a 24 hours worth of supply of glycogen in the liver. And then the muscles, of course, have more than that just by their sheer volume. But if you're having lots and lots of candy and there's a lot of glucose, circulating in the bloodstream, and if it doesn't have anywhere to go, like you're not walking or you're not lifting, your body's gonna be like, well, I guess I'll just package this as adipose tissue to save for a rainy day. So you can still, even if you've been having lots and lots of candy, and maybe you've been acquiring, you've been putting on maybe a little bit of water weight, or you've been also accumulating some adipose tissue, you can go at those lift sessions with aggressive, knowing that your body has the endogenous substrate to fuel those workouts. So I would say try them fasted, right? So try a big workout. If you've been having lots of candy, try to go at it fasted, see how that makes you feel. Always replenish afterwards with some carbohydrates and some proteins, because that's going to also help the reparation of the muscle, prevent muscle protein breakdown. But there's a lot of on either end of the event, whether you've kind of fallen off the bandwagon, you're having a hard time getting back on, that you can just turn it around with 1 or 2 great lift sessions. It's going to improve your mood. It's going to improve your sleep. It's going to help with autophagy. It's going to all the things, you're going to deplete some of the glycogen stores. You're going to, maybe tap into potentially, if the workouts are long enough and you're doing them fasted, you could potentially start tapping into that adipose tissue as well. So those are my strategies for you, the adult. Now let's talk about the kidlets, those little kiddies in the sugar, right? Those poor little brains that don't have their frontal lobes quite online yet. We are their substitute frontal lobe. and what we can do with them, because our poor little kids, man, like they get a little hit of sugar and like you can actually see the addiction happening like in real time. I remember when my son turned 1, we did like a cake smash, like a cake photo shoot, like for his 1 year and his 1 year birthday, we did bought him a cake. It was the first time he'd ever tasted sugar. And like, he sort of like put his hands in it. He was destroying it. And then he brought it to his mouth and he sort of looked at me and was like, how is this the first time that I'm tasting this? Like, F you guys. And like, of course, like he was like going nuts with this cake smash scenario. And of course, our little ones up until the age of 25, we know that their frontal lobe is not quite online. So the brain matures alongside the skeleton. The skeleton matures at about 25 years of age. And the same is true for the nervous system, including the central nervous system. And of course, the hallmark, the main show in the central nervous system is the brain. So when we have 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 21-year-olds, we can actually go ape shit with the sugar. So my kids, similar to the cake smash incident, don't actually get a lot of chocolate. They don't get a lot of candy. They're not used to this. They have never had it's a proud mama. They've never had Mickey D's. They've never had Taco Bell. They never had any of this junk. And so when Halloween comes along, I am sort of stuck in this limbo place because I have such strong feelings about sugar and the impact that it has on our immune system, on our frontal lobe. We tend to see more manic. Like my kids actually look manic when they've had sugar from Halloween in previous years. Like they literally look manic. They look angry. They don't really have control over their thoughts. They're going crazy. They're running around. And so I'm stuck between this rock and this hard place because I obviously am a metabolic coach and have some strong opinions about sugar, but also want my kids to have, kind of a somewhat normal existence. Like I want them to learn what it feels like to be in that sugar coma, to be in that manic state. Every year without fail, my kids complain of tummy aches after the sugar because they'll have 5, 10, 15 pieces of candy. And then 45 minutes later, after they've been aggressive and angry and running around like maniacs, they will come back and say, Mommy, my tummy really hurts. Why is that happening? And so every year I'm like, it's because of the sugar. It's because of the sugar. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create an interoceptive association that when they have the sugar, half an hour to 45 minutes later, they're going to get this tummy ache. And I feel like this is an important teaching moment, right? So where I'm like, okay, this is my view about sugar, but I also want them to develop their own. So, each and every time they feel awful, I will make sure to mention to them that it is partly because of the sugar, but I still allow them to have the candy. So that's how I sort of reconcile my feelings about sugar and allowing them to have their own experiences, right? And to allow them to come to their own conclusions with some guidance. Like I feel like I have a responsibility to my children as well. Like I'm not just going to allow them to have the entire bag. So I'll let you know when they learn the lesson. They haven't quite learned it yet. They still, they get 10 to 15 pieces of candy. When they get home, we go through the loot, they pick out their favorite 10, 15 pieces. And then we take the bag and we lock it up. So we have a room in the house that has a lock. It's like our, what we'd call like our cantina, for all the Italians that are listening. It's like our little, like where we keep the wine and, some storage items. We put the loot bag in the cantina and we lock it up. Typically, the week following Halloween, which is where we are now, they will ask for the loot. So they'll say like after dinner, Mommy, can I have some candy? Mommy, can I have some chocolate for my candy bag, like for my loot bag? And, we allow it. We allow 1 piece, 2 pieces, only if and only if A, they finished all their schoolwork. That's really important to me. B, we make sure that they've had an appropriate amount of protein and appropriate amount of fat, right? So they don't get the sugar first and then eat the dinner. They have to eat fully their dinner. They have to have their, we have dinner rituals that we go through. So like expressing gratitude. And when they're done, they help clean up, like bring plates to the dishwasher and all that stuff. So they have to finish all of those things in order to be eligible for candy that evening. And typically, within the first week, we give them one piece, two pieces, but it's always locked up afterwards, always out of sight. And I have found that within the week, they've forgotten about it because it's out of sight, out of mind. This is typically what happens. So that's how we handle the kids piece. I know that there's going to be many of you that disagree with that, but that's okay. We're allowed to have our own opinions. You don't have to it's not the gospel according to Dr. Stephanie. But that's the compromise that I've made for my children in order for them to have a normal experience. Because one of the things that I've observed in my own life is, growing up in a Portuguese home, wine was always around at dinner. And actually my grandparents made their own wine. So they would make house wine. They'd have it, they grew the grapes in the backyard. They did the whole thing, stomped the grapes, all that stuff, had the wine. And I would have wine with them as well as a young child. So completely underage. Yes, it's completely illegal, but it was like a sip of wine, like from my dad's, wine glass, or my uncle, like whoever I was sitting beside, like I would have some wine from whoever was sitting beside me. And so by the time I reached the age where I could have alcohol, in Ontario, I believe it's, is it 19? I think it's 18 or 19. I forget. I think it's 19. I would see in my university years when people were first allowed to legally drink, like they would get completely shit-faced. Like they would completely go on these booze binges that would leave them throwing up. And like, I have held more than my fair share of hair because that's what girls do, right? When you have a girlfriend who's throwing up, one of the best things you can do as a friend is to hold her hair. so the vomit doesn't get in her hair. So I always was the hair holder because I never had that, oh my gosh, this forbidden fruit is now, I'm allowed to have that. And I feel like sometimes in the healthcare space, we're so crazy about like sugar is the devil. And yes, in many ways it is, but it is up to your child to learn that lesson. It's not up to you to learn the lesson for them. So this is me allowing my children not to fail, but to learn that how sugar makes them feel, how it changes their personality. Like they get angry and they're very aggressive. I have boys, so they're like punching each other. And it takes a lot for me not to actually get involved and to be like, oh my gosh, you guys are hurting each other. If we separate them, if they're getting too nuts, but that's why I allow them to have the sugar so that when they are older, which they will be older and they are going to make their own money and they're going to be, hanging out with their friends, that when they do have money to purchase things, that it's not going to be this like secret, like, ooh, I'm going to like get all this sugar that I was never able to get. And then they're again, going to like binge on the sugar. So that's my hope with giving them access to it and giving them access to it in a way that's not overly restrictive. I think will also help them going forward. But I'm trying to balance that with their frontal lobes aren't quite developed yet. And so they are much more susceptible to addiction than maybe an adult might be. So there's like kind of like a dance that I'm trying to walk a really fine line between allowing them to make mistakes, but also protecting them, knowing that they don't have that full neurological capacity quite yet. So that is my black magic for you in terms of the candy. Like, if you had candy, it's fine. Hello, welcome to the human race. Nothing wrong with you. I had some. I used it for muscle reparation. Did a leg workout the morning of, and it's all good. So hopefully you can think about some of these strategies as, techniques and tools that you can use for upcoming Thanksgiving. If you are listening in the US of A. And if you're worldwide, which I know we are, of course, Christmas is coming and New Year's is coming, which is celebrated across many, many countries. And these can be techniques that you can use there too. And Christmas, of course, is often the season where we have work parties and there's lots of chocolate giving and all these different types of events where you can use some of these strategies that we talked about as well. And the one thing that I didn't mention was fasting. And I will quickly mention that I think fasting also has a part or also has a role here. And I've mentioned doing fasted workouts. So that's where I would definitely be thinking about fasting and integrating that into your strategy before the event. After the event, super easy for you to jump into a bit of a longer fast the next day, right? So if going crazy on the O. Henrys, you can absolutely, if you're used to doing, let's say a 12-12 or a 10-14 fast, super easy for you to jump into a 16-8 or even a little bit longer if you'd like an 18-6 or a 24-hour fast too. So lots of things for you to pick from in terms of your arsenal for dealing with sugar season. And I hope that you come back to this episode over and over again through the next several months to remind you of some of the options that you have at your disposal, and share this with a girlfriend if you think that this has been useful for you. And maybe you can create a little accountability team with you and your girlfriend. You both, say, let's have some candy. We're going to have some pie at Thanksgiving. We're going to have some Lindt chocolate, in the coming months around Christmas season or Hanukkah season. And let's see what we can do together. So I hope that you found this